Regular meeting of the White Bear Lake Conservation District Board to order. We have a quorum. And I'll ask, next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. And would anybody like to make any changes to the agenda? And I'll start. I'd like to move the first item under the executive committee up to new business. Second.
And I would like to add discussion of anti-plastic education campaign under education committee.
Okay, plastic. Any other adjustments to the agenda? You know, I think we should add them, personally.
So I would like to add item 8 for the Lake Utilization Committee. It says City of White Bear Lake, and they have 3 applications. I'd like to also add Fletcher Driscoll, Hickory Street, and McCartney Estates.
Last one, Mark.
McCartney
Okay.
Estates.
Any other changes to the agenda? I'll make a motion that we approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Next item, approval of prior meeting board minutes. And what we have, what Kim sent out are the minutes of our November 20th meeting. And we actually had a special meeting in January, but those minutes aren't included, so we'll hold off on those until our March meeting. So what we have in front of us are the approval of the November 20th, 2018 meeting minutes.
I move approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those are approved. Public comments. We allow 15 minutes for items not on tonight's agenda, and no one is here to make comments. So we'll move on to item 6, new business. And I would just like to introduce the new board member from Birchwood, Cameron Sigacan.
Sigacan. That was pretty good, though.
It wasn't even close.
That was great.
And so I'd like to just take a minute, Cameron, if you wouldn't mind just saying whatever you'd like to say about yourself so the board gets to know you a little bit.
Yeah, sure. 29 years old, mechanical engineer is what I do for a career. I enjoy the lake, and I figured, why not? I figured may as well try to give back a little bit. Other than that, I got a wife and a dog, a little French bulldog. We're getting another one. Other than that, that's pretty much all I do. Work, watch TV, and go on the lake. So, is that a good introduction?
That was great. Yep. And so welcome to the board. We appreciate
Thank you.
Appreciate your efforts on behalf of the
Hey,
board.
Cameron, didn't you say when you were interviewing that you grew up on the lake too?
I did not. Nope.
In the area?
In the area, correct. Went to Matamidi School District, but from Delwood.
Homegrown.
Homegrown.
Very nice. Okay, thank you for that. And there is no additional new business. On to agenda item 7, unfinished business. And we have no unfinished business. So we'll move on to item 8, reports and action items. And the first one is the executive committee, and that's me. The item underneath, okay. There was an item here that didn't make the agenda, it appears, that I would like to talk about. and that is that the executive committee met with the dock owners of Commercial Bay. Well, we invited all the dock owners, the city of White Bear Lake, and Brian McGoldrick. I forget what his group is actually called.
The docks of White Bear.
Docks of White Bear. Both showed up, and that was very, very nice of them to give us some time. Basically, what we talked about are the same types of items that we talked about when we met with each of the cities last year, and that is, how do you think the board's doing? What can we do better? But more specifically with this group, we discussed some items that we're considering making as changes, suggesting changes to the board over the next year. And those items were consideration of increasing the fees. We discussed penalties and any potential ordinance change. And we discussed potential ordinance changes that may come about as because of these other items. We discussed that for Commercial Bay, we are going to suggest to the board that we change the application form to require the dock owners in Commercial Bay to provide their DNR permits. So that, because the DNR identifies the number of boat slips for each of those entities. Then we also talked about dock layout, and that the dock layout, we'd like to move that back to the pre-low lake level dock layouts. And we had some good discussion about those items. I think one of these Mark's going to bring up in his report. But the others we'll bring forward at later dates. So that's that. And then the additional, or the last item under Executive Committee is the nominations for the 2019 Board Chair, Vice Chair, and Secretary Treasurer. And Alan, you'll maybe have to remind me the proper way to do this.
Yes, Chair, I believe that because of the lack of a quorum, we decided to extend this whole process out another month. And so, Mr. Chair, if you wanted to just essentially open up the floor for nominations for those key positions, and then just close nominations, give a reasonable time for people to speak up, and go from there, and we'll be making those selections next month. So,
Do we leave the nominations open until
Yep.
next month?
So if you don't feel like nominating yourself tonight, you can wait until next month.
Yeah, and I would just like to build on that point that Alan just made. If anybody has an interest in self-nominating themselves, all you have to do is let Kim know, our administrative assistant, let Kim know sometime between now and the March meeting. And then Kim will bring those nominations forward.
Yeah, it can be anonymous, that's right.
Yes.
So, and I don't know how long Kim's out, but I'm certainly available too. So if someone wants to email me, we'll just make sure that it hits the agenda with that list. And again, you can wait until, for the folks that aren't here tonight, we can have last-minute nominations before the vote's taken.
That's right. So I'm going to open nominations for Chair, Vice Chair, and Secretary Treasurer. Mike?
I would like to nominate Brian D. Sumit for chairman, Mark Gantz for vice chairman, and Diane Longville for treasurer.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Any other nominations tonight? Okay. We'll leave the nominations open until our March meeting. And again, if you'd like to nominate someone or you'd like to self-nominate, just let Alan or Kim know. Okay, so we'll move on to the Lake Quality Committee. Mike.
Okay, lake quality. Well, we have to get some treatment bids, and the first bid that we will do is for Eurasian water milfoil, and that'll be from Lake Management. And we'll give them the parameters that we used last year, where we're going to treat a little bit deeper, and we're going to treat with the full dosage allowed on the package, which is what the DNR says we can do. And I think we had pretty good results last year. In fact, we had very good results last year, and hopefully, when we do the survey this year, we'll know that we maybe won't have to treat as much. So I have to get a bid for that treatment, for the treatment of Eurasian water milfoil. Then the new thing on the shoreline, as we'll call it, are Phragmites, and we need to get a bid from Lake Management. I've already talked to them, and they treat it with copper sulfate, so it won't be very expensive, and a bid from them to treat it. Now, in the fall, the DNR came out and they did a survey of the entire lake shore, mostly, because that's where it grows. And so we have that survey, which they gave to us, and I'll have to get a permit, and then we will treat it. But that won't be till the fall, so this is nothing that I have to jump on. The Eurasian water milfoil bids and later the surveys we have to do now, but we will include in the asking Lake Management for bids the Phragmites and the survey that was produced. Hopefully then after that's treated, we can continue to have the DNR do the survey rather than have to pay for it from another source. They seem quite concerned and quite interested in following up on it. So that would take care of the treatment bids that will go out. Then we have to get some survey bids, and of course it'll be for Eurasian water milfoil, again, Steve McComas, and we'll do a full lake survey, and included in that survey, not only, we also do an inventory of the weeds, of the different kind of weeds all around the lake. I think we tested over 350 sites last summer. And we'll do that. I want to increase that because we also want to look for another invasive called starry stonewort. And that's something that we just don't want to have to deal with. If we find some, and I already talked to Steve McComas about it, and he said, well, around the landings is usually the first place that it shows up. And it's a little more tenacious than Eurasian water milfoil. It grows so dense that it's almost like a Brillo pad, and it grows in huge clumps. And again, it's treated, though, with a less expensive herbicide. It's treated with copper sulfate. So that's the same thing you treat for the itch and that kind of stuff. And it could have some effect on zebra mussels because they don't like it either. Starry stonewort we'll look for, but the main thing will be the Eurasian water milfoil. And so I will get a survey bid that will include looking for not only milfoil but starry stonewort. And so that kind of takes care of the bids. The other thing that I did last year and then I did again this year was to decide, or not to find out when ice on is. And the lake froze, and it refroze a number of times, but it was really early this year. It stayed frozen completely over on November 28th. As the sun came up, the morning of November 28th, the lake was totally frozen, and it never opened up anywhere else. Always hesitate to put that out very early because I don't want to assume that anyone would think that because it's frozen over, it's safe. So, meant to mention that at the November meeting, but I forgot. So November 28th was ice over. That's it for me. Any questions?
I have one, Mike. When Steve McComas does the work on the lake, does he do any water quality sampling?
The county does water quality sampling, and he picks up on it.
Okay.
So they post it. That's why we don't get the survey report till October, usually, because they post their samplings late. And I'm not sure if they got it into the survey or not. I'll have to go back and look. Because if they don't, he said that he would provide another page for that would show water quality. I don't have it with me tonight, otherwise I would.
No, that's all right. Yeah, I was thinking that.
I think it was in there, though.
That he generally he includes water quality
Yeah.
sampling results, and I didn't think that he did it himself, so he gets that from the county.
He just picks up on the county, so he doesn't charge us for doing that.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mike?
Yep, Mike, have we always worked, I think, is it Lake Management? Is that the name of the company that does the bid for the treatment? Is that what their name is?
Yeah, over the years, we send out, requests for bids, and Lake Restoration is another company.
Okay.
And then there's a DMI in Brainerd, I think it's called, and they would send back bids, but they were always higher than Lake Management.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's true or not, because it would sound like collusion, but it seems like the Lake Management kind of takes care of this side of the river, and Lake Restoration takes care of the other side of the river, and I don't know. But it always seems like we got the best bid from Lake Management. And then the last few times when we sent out bids to these companies, they didn't even reply. Maybe because we never used them, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Mike. We'll move on to the Lake Utilization Committee report. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll go over what we discussed in the executive committee first, and Alan, please help me if I get this wrong, but essentially, we haven't been asking the commercial bay users to attach their water use permit. The DNR gives all commercial marina users or owners, they're required to get a water use permit. And that tells them how many boats they're allowed to have in their own individual marina. So we're going to now attach that or add that to the application form, the annual application form, and hold them to what the DNR says. And if they want more boats, then they can go to the DNR and ask the DNR. And even at that point, I believe we don't have to, even if the DNR were to say they could, which I doubt they would, we still have the opportunity to take away. We just can't overdo what the DNR allows.
Do we have to vote on changes to the applications?
Yeah, it's a good question. Alan, do we have to make a motion and approve that motion to make a change to the application form, or is that something that we can just summarily, that Mark can do as the Lake Utilization Committee Chair?
What would be a change?
The change would be to require that these applicants in Commercial Bay provide the DNR.
As a matter of policy?
Yes.
Yes. I
So-
think there should be a vote that basically says from this point forward, that becomes part of the application process. So you're not really guided by any ordinance that says, you don't have to make a law change, you just have to make a process change. And so we did talk about that, earlier in the year and then at exec. And, I don't think you run into too many problems because, again, I think, Mark hit it on the head. They set the upper limit, essentially, that you can approve. But depending on conditions on the lake or something else, they still have to get approval, for example, for parking. I don't believe that the DNR asks that question. I think they might ask for the city, blessing as far as just general purposes go, but I'm not sure if they have that specific requirement that we do. And so if they can't, the applicant can't provide parking based on a larger number that, say, the DNR authorizes, then we would not issue a permit that has that number. So the only thing we can't do is exceed that number. So, yes,
So
if
with
they
the-
want more, they have to start at the top, basically.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. So is the proper path forward for, say, Mark, to mark up the existing application with the change and bring that to the board for approval?
That'd be fine. Or Kim can, I know because I've talked to Kim that, it's already in practice, if you will. So I think we're doing it, but it would be helpful to have it added to the application for sure. In the same way that we have this line on there about, the city letter.
Okay, so how, does that sound like okay, thanks, Mark.
And to that point, a letter went out this week to all of the marina owners, and it basically said, good afternoon, please send us a copy of your most recent DNR water use permit. It's required to be on file along with your annual permit application and insurance. Prior to sending your permit for 2019, we must receive this document. If you have any questions, please contact Mark Gans, blah, 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 blah. So they've been kind of proactively notified that this is probably going to happen so we don't get any lag time.
It affects just a handful of users anyway, so you'd be looking at what, 4?
Yeah. 5, yeah, 4 or 5.
Oh, yeah, the little one, 5.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
So, the first application is for White Bear Lake. We'll go through those first. Manitou, where they, I think that's what they call it, where they moor all the boats. So, no change from last year. The Utilization Committee unanimously approved, and I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And I have a little sailboat that we keep over there, so I'm going to abstain. But if there's no discussion, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay.
The next one is the Municipal Marina here off 61. No change from last year, and all the paperwork's correct. The Utilization Committee approved, and I so move.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
How many slips are they applying for?
Let's see, 160.
Okay, that's the limit.
So 160 slips was the question. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
The third and final for the city is Veterans Park. No change from last year. We moved to approve with the stipulation that they should only have to pay the application fee because that's kind of a public use dock, and that's traditionally, we don't charge them for the pier fee. And we approved that, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
So that's a dock with no boats?
Correct.
Okay.
Just a fishing dock
Got
over
it.
in the corner here.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So those pass.
The next is Fletcher Driscoll. He has the sailboats on the peninsula, and no change from last year. Our committee approved, and I so move. 15 boats.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
The next is Hickory Street, and we moved to table that. They did not, at least what I received, didn't have a diagram of their dock, and they did not check off whether it was identical to last year or changed from last year. So we're kicking that back. And then, let's see here. The last is McCartney Estates. They have a change from last year, and that's over in Matamidi, over by, I don't know if you know where the Ben's house is, but it's off Locust, basically, in Matamidi, where Locust would, if it were to go straight into the lake, it'd be there. So we like it. It looks, they bought new dock. And so they're reconfiguring, instead of kind of go, they used to go sort of parallel to the lake, and now they're going straight out in. The only issue there is that letters did not go out to the neighbors. So we liked it, we approved it with the caveat that if the neighbors come back, they have 2 weeks to respond to us. And if they have a problem, then we're going to revisit the issue. So what is the best thing to do in that situation? Table it?
And is that based on the reconfiguration?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd probably just table it and wait, you know.
Then we'll table that?
It's February. Nothing's going to hurt by waiting a month.
Unless anybody has any other questions for me?
I do.
Oh, yes, sir.
Is the dock the same length?
It goes 131 feet into the water.
What was the old one? Do you remember?
Well, the old one was set up differently because this is perpendicular to the lake, and the old one went parallel. Remember,
Yeah.
they just parked right in. So I would have to look back, but I don't think they were more than 40 feet into the lake before. Maybe a little farther.
A little more.
Yeah, they were farther than
Yeah,
that.
because the shoreline goes in there a little bit. So, okay, just, you know, just wanna
Rashad
keep it-
was at the meeting, and he asked them that, and they said it's within, okay, thank you. It reminded me. It's 6 feet longer, but they don't need to do that 6 feet if we don't want to. But the max into the lake is, by our ordinance, is 200 feet unless they need to go farther out because of depth of water up to 300. So they're within the limits.
They have good water there. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Mark? Okay, thank you, Mark. So we're on to the Lake Education Committee. Scott?
All right, a few things. First of all, we have our lake cleanup. A few weeks away now. It's on March 9th, which is Saturday at 10 a.m. at Bel Air Beach. And at noon, the VFW serves lunch in the outdoor pavilion there. I think it's highly likely that we will be able to get out on the ice this year. And, I mean, we haven't. I mean, 2 years ago, I mean, it was open water at that time. It's organized by the Boy Scouts. We sponsor it. We will provide plastic trash bags for it. I need to, I've put in the request. We can usually get them from the Conservation Corps, but if not, I'll have to buy some, and we'll, submit the expense. So that sort of leads into the next item. I passed out, this is an educational advocacy idea, and I just wanted to bounce it off the board and see what kind of comments it got. The idea would be, and one of the reasons that we do this lake cleanup is to pick up all the plastic junk out in the ice house areas in particular, because once that goes in the water, it stays there like forever. And if it does break down, it forms microplastics, which then get into the food chain. So the idea would be to manufacture signs that look kind of like this. It's just a draft. I'd probably have my daughter, the graphic designer, do an appropriate one. Little, ice stock images stamped over. And what we would do is have them manufactured. There's several places online, but it's hard to tell what the quality is. Probably the best way would be to go to the MnDOT's sign shop, and I could send this in and see what they would cost. We would then go to all of the marinas, the beaches, the boat launches, whoever would, who would be likely to post one if we offered them to them. I mean, these could cost, the ones I saw online, I don't know about the quality, starting at $30. My guess is they could be $150, these. So we'd have to see how many of these units would want to post one if we made it available, and then we'd have to budget that out. If it exceeded our education budget, we'd have to take it out of reserves. So right now, I'm just sort of flying the idea by you. So does anyone have any comments? You think it's a good idea?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think it's phenomenal.
Okay. I will move forward with that then. So that would be like our education project of the year. Nice to have an idea. And the last thing I just wanted to mention that both I and Kim forwarded an advocacy email from Minnesota lakesandrivers.org. And what they're doing is advocating a doubling of funding for aquatic invasive species grants of the kind we provide, because in 2016 they were cut in half. I don't know if we even got any money. Did we get any money, Mike, last year? Yeah. So anyway, this is an advocacy group. So I don't know if we should take a position on it politically. But each individual, you can push the button to send a letter to your senator and representative. I will leave it there, unless Mike isn't coming.
Well, yeah, I got that same email. No, there haven't been any grants since 2000, well, last couple of years. But they're trying, what the legislation is to have $1 million set aside for invasive species and for lake associations across the state on a first-come, first-served basis, no more than 10% to any one organization for the year of 2020. So then you click on it, and then they want your name, your address, everything about you, and then you have to find your senator, which you know who that is, and then you pick on that, and then you push it, and then this letter's already pre-written. So you put it out on an individual basis, it looked like. But then they wanted the lake association, too, that you belong to on there, I think. So being only 2 conservation districts, they never have a line for conservation district. It's called lake association.
Okay.
So I don't know if the board wants to take that up and vote on it, or if you want to send it to all the board members. And
I think we already have. I
okay.
forwarded to everybody, and
Yeah.
Kim also did.
yeah,
So it should be in your email.
if we want to get involved in that or not, it's to our benefit. If they reinstate grant money, I used to, the minute it came out, I'd be down there with a hand-delivered envelope within a day or so.
You know,
We always did get grants. We always did get some money until it dried up.
Alan, do you have can you advise us on what would be, so obviously we can all do it as individuals as we so choose, but would it be appropriate for the board to also say, just as an example, the board were to make a motion and approve to have Kim send on behalf of the board a note to our senator, or the senator for the 5, and do we have 2 for the 5 communities?
You would have a different senator on the, I guess you could say, the south side versus north side. So
Yep.
Chamberlain, I think, is your senator on this side. And then I think Uyghur's still a senator on the south side.
Okay, so to each of those, would that be an appropriate action?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if the money's out there, you should definitely get in line for it. So this is an impaired lake, and it's a very major, important lake to the metro, and any help you can get, if they're offering it, you should take it.
No, the money's not there unless they vote it in.
Right,
They want to
well-
hear from us to
so
get.
it's lobbying,
I mean,
basically.
you need to support that, I guess you could say. So,
So, I had a note here, I forgot, but I did kind of thought that maybe if we asked as a board, it would be a little more significant.
yeah, on behalf of, yeah.
How many letters they get with people's names on them, and they really don't read them, but.
I'd be very surprised if Minnetonka wasn't doing the same thing, put it that way.
Well, I'll make the motion that we have our administrative assistant send a letter on our behalf advocating for the $1 million fund, grant fund to provide grants to lakes for invasive species cleanup
To all the appropriate senators.
to the 2 appropriate senators.
And Scott, your note went to Kim, right?
Yeah, in fact, she forwarded it.
Yeah, so Kim has
So
it.
I couldn't
she
remember where it
knows about
started,
it.
but turning that language right back around, basically in the letter, is what we support.
That's
da, da,
right.
da, da, yeah.
Is it only senators? There must be representatives too, isn't it? I mean, it have to pass both.
Yeah, this,
Yeah, it's got to go through both.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's going to vote on it, so both houses or chambers would have a say on it.
Okay.
so I'll amend my motion to include representatives for the 5 communities around the lake.
Sure. That'll be a few more letters, but that's just fine. Because I think that'd be Amy Waslowick and Pete Fisher, right?
That's my motion. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I think it's the way to go.
Okay, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of my education report.
Any questions for Scott? Okay, thank you, Scott. So we'll move on to the treasurer's report, and I'll take that. I'd like to make a motion to approve checks 4548, so 4 through 4554.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes. And we're on to the board council report. Alan?
You had the highlights from our executive committee meeting fairly well, and again, some of that stuff's now put into practice already, so that's helpful. I imagine we'll be covering some of the other policy things as we move along. I did get an interesting referral, I guess you could say, out of the blue. 2 cases came at me through the court system. So the court staff in Washington County didn't know what to do with these 2 cases, and for some reason they thought it was me. And so I thought, how unusual. A couple of highway patrol cases for the Conservation District. And it turns out that both of them emanated from 120 and County Road E. And so it took a little bit of discovery to figure that out. So I had to go and get the reports from the State Patrol and talk to the people at the Washington County Court Administration. And for some reason, they thought that it happened in the district's jurisdiction. And I explained to the court staff that, well, unless the HPs were out on the lake, chasing people down, it would be difficult to imagine how you would ever see a highway patrol officer there. So turns out that unbeknownst to me, there's actually a couple of pockets of the city of White Bear that actually are on the east side of Century. So if everyone here is familiar with that shopping complex with the kitchen remodelers and the
Yeah.
miscellaneous businesses, for whatever reason, there's a little carve-out that has that as part of the city of White Bear Lake on the other side. And so that became the jurisdiction for one of the cases, and then the other one was a DUI with a attendant accident that was a little further down in Matamidi. But the good news is, because of that and because I got called in, we found out that we don't actually have a number to assign Conservation District cases in Washington County. Most of the time when I'm prosecuting those things, it's the Ramsey Patrol, because that historically has been the more active policing unit on the lake. And so the DUIs and some of the other cases that I typically see on the lake all get processed through Ramsey County. So it gave us an excuse to actually set up the Conservation District now over in Washington County. So before, they must have been using some other community's registration number, for want of a better term, to be able to get cases into the system. So now we actually exist in Washington County. So anyway, with that, I would stand for questions. Just kind of interesting way to spend part of the week last week.
Nice. Any questions for Alan? Thank you. Okay, thank you, Alan. So we're on to the consent agenda. Would you like me to handle this? I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda. And we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next item is announcements. Kim isn't here. Does anybody else have any announcements that they would like to make? Okay. Then I will make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you all.